Hi, I'm James Bruce, you're watching Tabletop Dungeon, and today I'm taking a look at Zombicide Greenhorde. Now this game was a Kickstarter, it came out about a year ago, and that's why I'm calling it a sort of retro review. So why am I reviewing it now? Well, firstly, because I literally just got around to opening some of the other boxes that came with it. Yes, I did back it on Kickstarter, which means I had quite a lot of stuff. But we'll talk about that later. I'm also reviewing it now because very soon the next edition of Zombicide, which is set in space for some bizarre reason called Zombicide Invader, is due to be delivered to backers soon. Which means inevitably there's probably going to be a bit of interest in older versions of Zombicide as well. So briefly before we begin, let's talk a little bit of background about the Zombicide series. So there are three thematic settings for all of the Zombicide games. The first was Zombicide Modern, which consisted of 3 standalone games as well as expansions. The second is this Zombicide Fantasy series, of which Greenhorde is the second standalone game, the first being Black Plague. And as I mentioned, there's the soon-to-be Zombicide Space series, which is called Zombicide Invader. Now, as far as I know, the Zombicide Fantasy series is the most popular, probably because a lot of people buy into Zombicide, not just because of the game, but also because of the horde of miniatures that you get with it. And inevitably, fantasy stuff tends to be more common on the RPG side, so there's more opportunities to use the minis. So Greenhorde is a cooperative miniatures game for 1 to 6 players in which you and your survivors battle against increasingly difficult waves of zombie orcs and goblins, hence the green bit of Greenhorde. It currently retails for around $50 to $100, but if you're trying to get hold of the full Kickstarter pledge at this point, you can expect to pay more along the lines of $200 to $300. So as ever, I'm going to break this review down into 3 parts. Feel free to skip ahead. Time codes should be on screen now, as well as in the comments. In the first part, I'll talk very briefly about how to play Greenhorde and what makes it different to Black Plague, the earlier game in the series. In part 2, I'll give you my comments, my opinion of the game. And then in part 3, we'll talk about Kickstarter. It would be completely remiss of me to not mention Kickstarter somewhere. So let's start with a very brief how to play. Inside the box, you're going to find 9 double-sided modular terrain tiles, 6 survivor player characters complete with plastic dashboard, mini and character card, as well as coloured places to differentiate them, 6 dice, 65 zombie minis, including your basic 3 types, an abomination monster and a necromancer, 1 trebuchet mini, and a stack of equipment cards, zombie spawn cards, noise tokens, terrain overlay tiles, trackers, all the good little cardboard bits. So to play the game, you're going to lay out the tiles according to the current mission, of which there are 10 in the basic rulebook. However, you can download more fan-made scenarios online. You'll find cardboard chits for things like doors, objectives, and other scenery items. Next, choose your characters and place the coloured bases on the mini for easy identification. Scenarios are designed for 6 characters, which means you can play with up to 6 players. However, you can also just play all of them together if you want, if there's just you, or you can split it up between 2 of you, or however you like. If you do want to play with less characters, then I'd suggest looking into the selective spawning rule. Characters and their inventories are represented on these handy plastic dashboards, with pegs to indicate current life and skills, as well as experience points along the bottom. Each arm can hold an appropriate item with a little hand icon as indicated on the card. Then you have a body slot as well for armor or optionally a character's special item. You also have a number of backpack slots in which you can put additional things as well as general use items. Each kill or objective taken will increase your experience, and if you level up, which is indicated by these colored bands, you get to choose 1 new skill, which you indicate by placing a peg next to it. However, beware, because as soon as any one of the characters has entered a new color band, has leveled up sufficiently, the game will get more difficult, with more and tougher zombies spawning every single turn. So each round, each character has 3 activations which you can move, attack, or perform an action such as search or open a door. Movement zones on the board are indicated by the edge of tiles or by solid lines. It's not always obvious, but some areas are connected and they count as one zone for the purpose of movement. After each player has gone, you will have a round of zombie turns and zombie spawning. In addition, whenever anyone opens a door into an unknown area like a house, you're going to perform a spawn action for every single room, which makes venturing into a building quite dangerous. So new to the Zombicide series in Green Horde is the Horde concept, where every time you have a spawn action, more zombies are added to a special place off the game board, and they count as accumulating in the green horde that's coming from out of town. At some point, you're going to draw a card which says enter the horde, and at that point, all of the currently collected zombies that are off the board, they're all going to come on to a single spawn point or a single room inside of a house. This is absolutely hectic. And it really changes how the game plays, because rather than just having a couple of zombies here and there, suddenly you might be faced with 20, 30 more zombies all at once. Now, also new to Green Horde, and specifically in order to counter the Horde concept, is the siege weapon, or the trebuchet. Now, this is a very powerful weapon which you can fire anywhere on the board, even without line of sight, and you can even fire it off the board to the horde that's assembling. However, it is a bit of a double-edged sword, because the fact it can kill so many zombies at once isn't always a good thing. You might find yourself leveling up rather too quickly and making the entire game too difficult for everyone else. Therefore, it's a good idea to rotate the characters that are using it, or preferably just use it very sparingly, only when you absolutely have to. So using the trebuchet is a very expensive proposition. It'll take all 3 activations of your turn to fire it. However, you do get the choice of doing 1 very powerful shot, 3 medium strength shots, or 6 pretty weak shots that'll take out only the weakest of zombies. There's 3 new types of terrain introduced in Green Horde 2. Water, which is printed directly onto the tiles, barriers, and hedgerows. So these spiky barriers don't block line of sight, but they do stop movement for both you and the zombies. Hedgerows, on the other hand, do block line of sight, but they don't block movement. However, because you can't see what's on the other side, every time you go through one, you must roll the dice, and on a roll of a 1, a walker is spawned into that zone. Water counts as difficult terrain for your characters, so it takes an extra action to move from one zone of water to another. Zombies aren't affected by this movement penalty. It also costs another action to climb out of the water if it's a ledge. However, zombies cannot climb, so they're stuck. This can make for some interesting strategic play where you lead the zombies through, climb out, and then they're stuck there. And they'll have to try and find another way out. All right, enough about the rules. Let's talk about what I really like about Green Horde. Fundamentally, this is yet another zombies attacking in hordes. Very thematic game with very light RPG elements to it. You will level up, and as you level up, you choose new skills, get new equipment. So far, so good. But specifically in Zombicide Green Horde compared to Black Plague, the additional terrain types, the siege mechanic, and the off-table horde, which will eventually all flood in, really does add some complexity and strategic depth, which the original Black Plague was perhaps missing. Black Plague could feel a little bit simplistic at times. There were very few options to make, with the optimal move usually being obvious. On the flip side, Green Horde is a lot less forgiving of bad strategies. In Black Plague, you could pretty much just run into a horde, and if you had good enough weapons, you could kill everyone and somehow survive. If you try and do that in Green Horde without any strategic thinking as to how you're going to get out or who's going to back you up and that sort of thing, you're going to find yourself dead very quickly. It is very unforgiving. In Green Horde, each zombie does 2 damage if they hit you, and remember, you only have 3 lives. So unless you're equipped with some kind of armor, 2 hits will take you down. Now, one common complaint in Green Horde is that the siege weapon, the trebuchet, is just either overpowered or very boring to play. Sometimes it does feel like you just need to cheese the trebuchet a bit, with one character locked there, basically. Now, if you're playing with 2 players, each you have 3 characters, or perhaps 3 with 2 characters, then that's less of a problem, you know, you have more to play with. But if you're playing in a 6-player game where everyone only has 1 character and that 1 character is spending their entire turn perhaps rolling 1 dice to fire this at a dragon or an abomination, that's going to get pretty tiring for that player very quickly, and you're going to have to ensure that you're enforcing some kind of rotation rule. Just like grabbing powerful vault weapons, getting over to the trebuchet and making use of it becomes a goal in and of itself for every game. Now, you could just choose to play without the trebuchet siege weapon, of course, but I think you'd be making it really too difficult for yourself, what with the horde mechanic of a ton of zombies coming on at once. Without this to combat that, you really will get in trouble quickly. Another complaint is one of the runner zombies looks very much like the model from the walker zombies. It's pretty hard to differentiate, so you may want to give yours a little bit of a brown wash or something like I did, if you're not going to paint them entirely. A bigger complaint is about the new splitting mechanic, which occurs when 1 or more zombies has an equidistant path to the current target survivors. In this case, the group will split up, even if it's just 1 model. And the way that works is that if it's 1 or an odd number of models, you add another model in order to get an equal amount between each path. And the problem in Green Horde is that it occurs quite a lot because of the hedgerows. On occasion, you may find a single zombie has split into 2, which then gives you 2 single zombies, which then split again. Frankly, my solution to this rather odd rule is just to ignore it. House rule it that if zombies are splitting, you don't need to add an extra model, just split them however you like. Simples. It's your game, play it how you want. The campaign serves as a good introduction and it ramps up difficulty quickly. However, there's very little story to it. Certainly not on the same level of Gloomhaven, where you open a door and read a bit of flavor text. Really, it's a game where you'll be developing your own story and character personalities as you go along, assuming your characters survive, which they probably won't. The modular tile system is great if you like to make your own campaign or download some of the many that are available online. This is a fantastic system to do it with. There is a massive amount of Zombicide fantasy content out there. And of course, you can combine all the tiles in your custom games from Green Horde as well as the original Black Plague. If you've never played Zombicide and want to dip your toes into it, I think Green Horde is a pretty good starting place. It's great value, there's good replayability, and if you do really get into Green Horde, then there is a ton of extra content that you can buy and download as well. There are loads of expansions like Wolfsburg, Friend and Foes, No Rest for the Wicked, as well as extra enemy types like Murder of Crows, Dead-Eye Walkers, Rats, Ghosts. There's tons of guest character boxes too. And there's a horde of plastic upgrades you can get, like doors and tokens, and, well, it's a game you can put an awful lot into, by which I mean throw absurd amounts of money at the manufacturer's CMON. However, there is one enormous rotting green elephant in the room that we need to talk about, and it's called Kickstarter. One of the most polarizing aspects of CMON as a manufacturer is their reliance on Kickstarter to basically take pre-orders for pretty much all of their games, not just for Zombicide. And they do this by offering a ludicrous amount of Kickstarter exclusives that are never available again. For the Green Horde campaign, just the base pledge got you 15 additional basic zombies, 10 exclusive abominations with really pretty incredible and unique designs, 3 character necromancers, 1 massive exclusive feral dragon, 4 fatty bursters, 1 ballista siege weapon, a horde tile card, and a bunch of extra weapon cards. Oh, and last but not least, 34 additional survivor characters, 31 of which are exclusives. So wait, the base game has 6 survivors, while the Kickstarter edition has 40. Aha. You will miss out on a huge amount of content for this game if you didn't buy it at the Kickstarter. I kind of feel sorry for anyone that would buy it today at retail. There's just so much more that you're missing. Now, that doesn't invalidate my opinion of the base game by any means. It's still a great game as it is. It stands alone, even without all the extra content. And I'm certainly not complaining. I've got the extras. I back pretty much whatever Come On puts on Kickstarter religiously, so I've never missed out. But for those who might really get into the game, who are planning to buy this to play for a long time with their gaming group, who might want to get it for all of the miniatures to paint, you are almost certainly going to want all of the extras that came with the Kickstarter. And for that, you're going to be paying well over the odds on the second-hand eBay market. Now, some people see this business practice as frankly kind of disgusting, while others see it as just a perk of using Kickstarter to help a company manufacture a game. Now, Simon certainly doesn't need our help in manufacturing any games. However, I think that the number of orders they get on Kickstarter is usually a very good indication of how much they're going to sell at retail. And in that respect, it certainly helps them to figure out what they need to produce. Also, let's not forget you're going to be waiting a year or more for delivery of your game after you back it on Kickstarter, so you've lost that chunk of change for a pretty long time. But look, my point is, this whole Kickstarter thing makes it really difficult to recommend Greenhorde as something to buy today. The truth is, you've missed out on so many cool exclusives that you could have had if you backed the Kickstarter. And you'd either be insane or rich to try and buy them today. And yes, while the base game is good, I feel like there's always going to be that nagging feeling in the back of your mind of what you could have had. Therefore, perhaps the best solution is to just not buy into Zombicide at the moment. There's a ton of other great games out there. Amuse yourself with those for a while. Until maybe the next Zombicide Kickstarter, when you too can be just as addicted to all this plastic crack. Until next time, thanks for watching.